Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation on a social problem for Social Work 905. The topic I chose is adolescent suicide, and I want to start off by apologizing if I sniffle or anything or sound a little funny. I seem to be coming down with this summer cold. Now, my social problem description is increasing rates of suicide among adolescents in the United States. Why should the social work profession care about this social problem? Well, it seems pretty straightforward that suicide and death is important just because of life in general. But I wanted to focus on some relevant social work code of ethics core values that I believe are there. With service, just really to help people in need, and obviously, these group of people with suicidal ideation or anything are people that are in great need. For social justice, to pursue social change on behalf of the vulnerable, and I can't think of many more vulnerable populations than individuals that have suicidal ideation or want to take their life or that are at that point in their life and have these feelings. The dignity and worth of the person, treat each person with respect and value. We care about these people because we value all people. The importance of human relationships, honestly, working to promote, restore, or maintain, enhance the well-being of these individuals, families, and groups. It's just vital for us to work with these people that are in situations like this. And really, the effect on fundamental human rights, when you think of freedom and safety and health care and just the rights and access to the services you need, these people need services, and it's a fundamental human right for them to be able to have them. And I wanted to start off with the scope of the problem, just looking at some national figures and the trend that's been happening with just suicide overall and growing. If you look at the graphic on the left, it shows that the overall rate of suicides per 100,000 population from 2001 to 2017 has gone from 10.7 per 100,000 up to 14 per 100,000, and that's all male and female combined. And if you look at males, it's gone from 18.2 to 22.4. It's gone up 4 at the same rate, and females have gone from 4.1 to 6.1. So it's been a steady increase for male and female, and the combination thereof has just steadily been going up year by year by year. It's growing. You don't really have much stagnation. It's just been growing and growing and growing. So this epidemic is going up and up with this happening. If you look at some more breakdown with the scope, we break down into the ages of the populations, and these are from CDC, and it breaks down the male and female, and you can see the disparity there between the male and the female on the left on the center figure, and the males on the right, with ages 10 to 14 being 3 per 100,000 for male and 1 per 100,000 for female. But if you jump up to the 15 to 24 range, it's 5 for female and 22 for male, which is a huge jump there, getting in the 15 to 24 range versus the 10 to 14. And then just breaking down some other rates by race. It's amazing to see, and I know we discussed this in class the other day too, with some of these minority populations, to look at the single highest suicide rate per 100,000 population by race is the American Indian and Alaskan Native at 33.6, which is way above the average of 14 overall, or 22.4 overall for men that you see in the far left at 33.6. That's very high. And then the next highest two groupings are both white males, both non-Hispanic and Hispanic, followed by black, and then Asian, and then black Hispanic and Asian Hispanic. It's interesting to see the breakdown by race and which ones are at the top and the bottom. And it'll be really interesting to look at the adolescents by race in Michigan compared to this. So now that we've looked at some of the national numbers, I wanted to look at specific numbers for Michigan in the scope of the problem. For suicide is the second leading cause of injury death for ages of 10 to 14, and the third leading cause of injury death for ages 15 to 19. And then it's the third leading cause for all deaths for ages from 5 to 24 in the state of Michigan. And the suicide rate has increased, according to the CDC in Michigan, between 31 and 37% from 1999 to 2016. So it's just been growing and growing and growing every single year. And the really interesting thing I wanted to look at here, coming from the state of Michigan's website on suicide deaths, is looking at the rates by age and by race. And if you look, especially with the males, remember I just shared that it was the American Indians and Alaska Natives that were the highest, followed by white males, and there was a large drop off to the black and Hispanic. But when you look here, specifically with age 15 to 19 for males in Michigan, white males are at 13.1, black males are at 11.8, Hispanic males are at 12.9, and the average is 12.9, which is pretty steady. It doesn't have the same drop by ethnicity when we look at the different races for adolescent males in the state of Michigan, who have a much higher rates of suicide than females do. And that's especially worthy of note when you look at the population sizes in comparison. So the really, really high representation of minority suicide rates compared to the national level here in Michigan with adolescent males. And I wanted to share some information on what causes this social problem. So what's causing this uptick in suicide rates, and what factors are contributing to suicide? According to the CDC here, they have a breakdown of percentages, and they even put the caveat on here that this is really limited to what's reported on medical documentation and law enforcement documentation to know what was a contributing factor to these suicides. So the number one is relationship problems, followed by a crisis in the past or upcoming, and substance use, financial problems, physical health problems, legal problems, loss of housing. So a lot of different crises events, really. I would put a lot of these into that crisis event category, and there can be a lot of overlap for these things to influence a person's life. But even though these are what's reported and we're limited to that, with what is causing this social problem, based on the limited documentation from the medical field and from law enforcement, there's a lot of academic literature on what other things increase the risk for suicidal ideation. So academic research shows there are three main areas, and there can be overlap with these areas as well, that have been found in discrimination, victimization, and bullying. So really, discrimination and the main groups for all of these areas by far, which are 2 to 7 times more likely to attempt suicide and much more likely to experience bullying, discrimination, and victimization, are individuals of a minority race and sexual orientation that does not fit the quote-unquote standard heterosexual cisgender individual. So those populations are at a much higher risk, making this a really important area for social workers to look into. Some consequences for the increase in adolescent suicide, or suicide in general, is just the continued increase in loss of life. Life is the number one thing we're looking to preserve and help here, and just there's a continued increase in death, and it is sad. There's an expense, a dollar amount attached to this. The CDC estimates that there is a $1,189,058 cost per suicide in Michigan. And this is looking at just the total medical cost, all the paperwork, everything that goes along with it, along with the future money that individual would make for the economy in the state, and just what the overall loss would be. And they did stats. If you look at that $1 million line per individual, in the year 2016, Michigan lost $1.5 billion in current medical expenses and future earned in the state of Michigan due to suicide. 1.5 billion in that year. That's a massive number. Another cost is just bereavement from the loss of an adolescent for the family, for their peers. There's a cost associated with that and the work and the mental health needs that individuals have after that loss. There can often be more mental health issues for the individuals that are left behind that lost this family member or peer as well. And this last piece, I know it's extra, and I'm sorry I'm making the video a little longer here, but I wanted to have a personal impact and give you Ian's story. Sorry, it's a little hard. Ian was the son of my wife's best friend through school and in life, still a good friend. It's a part of our wedding, basically part of the family. Had struggled with suicidal ideation, went into access services at a local CMH. It's from Charlotte, Michigan. And he was told his insurance was too good for the CMH. The CMH couldn't take him because he didn't have Medicaid to go to the local ER. Went to the local ER, saw a PA, a physician's assistant, who was in training, actually, someone in training to be a physician's assistant, and shared a story, shared his plan, what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to an overpass and jump onto the freeway was his plan, and got talked down, and he was sent home with his parents, said it'll be okay, watch him. Well, the parents fell asleep. He snuck out that night, and he executed his plan exactly as he said he would. Ian, by all intents and purposes, the story here was a great kid, successful, scholarships coming for soccer, did great with grades, very personable, loved everybody. So this affects anybody. And for me, just the future study and I want to do in this would be with mental health parity, and getting access, because his too good insurance didn't get him the service he would have had if he had Medicaid. So this is near and dear to my heart, and I just wanted to add the personal touch, and thank you for listening. And here are the references if anybody would like to check out some of the academic research I was reading. And I am excited to do more and look into this more and what policies are being looked at, are in place to tackle this social problem.